Welcome back. Hey, what a joy to have back with us today Jodell Onstott. She's a socio-biblical historical research specialist. How's that? And her work focuses on comparative biblical and ancient Near Eastern studies. She's the author of this incredible book right here called Yahweh Exists. And I'm telling you, what an incredible resource. You may want to go to yahwehexist.com and check it out. But if you see this book in the bookstores, what a resource. I think she started writing this book when she was 4 years old. Hi, Jodell. How are you?
I am wonderful. So great to be with you this morning, Perry.
Good to see you. I'm trying to think. What do you got in here? 1,100 pages plus in this book?
Yes, and it took 15 years, so I was a little bit older than 4. But it was, I was putting about 18 to 20-hour days in, just researching and, just following leads as I came across more information. And it has been such a blessing, and I really didn't want to leave any stone unturned, so that's why it's so massive.
Thank you. Are you writing an addendum to this or a sequel to this?
I am writing a sequel. The first volume really focuses on the historicity of the Old Testament. So we have to kind of form a foundation there before we can go forward. So the next volume will get into the Intertestament era, the Second Temple era, as well as the New Testament era.
Thank you for your work. This is wonderful. Jodell, it seems that America is at a constitutional crisis. And I say that with a broken heart. We're suggesting that our forefathers didn't get it right and we need to modify what they really meant. And we're steering away from the basic roots of our Constitution, which from your research tells us is derived right out of the Bible. And I know your heart is in that. What have you found, the parallels, how in the Constitution and biblical history? How can you help us walk through this, that they really did get it right in the first place?
When you go back to ancient history, it's really interesting, and I'm going to actually take us back a little bit further than even our nation's founding. When you look at Genesis 9, you find that there's 3 divisions of families. You have the Abrahamic family, you have the Egyptians with Ham, and you have Japheth and the Greeks. And you find that a lot of our basic systems and models of government, even today, stem from that. So in Egypt, you had a very hierarchical top-down administration. In Egypt, it kind of developed organically where you had some competition, but there was still a lot of hierarchy. But there wasn't this codified idea of right and wrong. There wasn't this system of common law that really established justice on the land. With Israel, you find something totally revolutionary in that it isn't that a nation is governed by men, as it was in Egypt and as it was in Greece. Rather, we are governed in the United States by ideas, both in ancient Israel and more modernly in the United States. These ideas and these values are what form the basis of our thought process, of our morality, of our justice. So when we find that when we live by it, when we follow it, there's incredible peace and harmony, there's justice, and as we decline from it, we lose sight of that justice on our land. So that, and just to give you an example, in our court systems today, if you come from a family, say, with no criminal record, and you mess up, whether maybe it's a drug charge or something a little more nefarious, they're going to throw the book at you. There really is there are second chances, but you're going to have a very high penalty. Whereas if you're a career criminal, you have a rap sheet that's 20 pages long, there's a lot of leniency that is shown to you. The biblical paradigm is really the exact opposite, where the biblical paradigm is that if you, and they take into account your family, if there is this pattern of lawfulness, this pattern of always doing right, and you mess up one time, well, you're getting you give a lot of grace in those situations. Whereas if your whole family and you're career criminals, and that is your pattern, well, you find that there is not so much grace that is extended, because the justice and the righteousness and the protection of the community is really what's at stake. And so there's a distinction made between those that pursue justice and righteousness and those that don't. And that is something that we are really declining in today, where we pity the evildoer. We pity the criminal, where if you look at the book of Deuteronomy, there's a direct command: do not pity the evildoer, seek righteousness instead.
Scripture says, when the ungodly are in rule, and I'm paraphrasing, when the ungodly are in rule, the people mourn, but when the righteous rule, the people rejoice. Wow. We seem to have lost our moral moorings in this country. We're having a hard time identifying even what happened in Paris over the weekend as being evil.
Yeah, and I posted on my Facebook page a very excellent article that talked about the religious foundation of jihad and of this caliphate, because people don't realize that what Daesh, and I use Daesh because ISIS really gives them more credibility than what they're worth. But when you look at Daesh and what they're trying to do, they are trying to establish a caliphate. And most of us in America, we are really separated from this whole idea that they want to reestablish the Ottoman Empire. They want to subjugate Europe. And that is really what they are trying to do. The entire Middle East, they really want to bring it back into subjection, and they want to be the conquerors. They want to be the rulers. And to live in their state, if you don't convert, then you pay this really high tax. And, it's just trying to go back, take us back about 600 years is really what they're trying to do. And there really is no distinction between religion. Every one of us, whether we're atheist, whether we're Episcopalian, Baptist, it doesn't matter what label we come from. We all make decisions in our life based on our belief system. And again, whether it includes God or it doesn't, our decisions that we make for our life are based on that belief system. So that is what you see with Muslims and with Islam in Europe and throughout the Near East today.
There seems to have been, with all of this, Jodell, a movement of appeasement until Friday night. Now, we had our 9/11. Now, Europe's had their 9/11. And in spite of whatever religious belief or background you have, the world seemed to have somewhat of an appeasement attitude. If we just kind of all kumbaya, we'll get along. What falls through the cracks is the very thing you talk about. That's the difference between good and evil. But now it manifested itself. And I think what your research shows is that there's a distinctive between the two, and which one is really going to rule.
It really does, because when you look at throughout world history, you look at the different government structures that we have, whether you want to look at communism, socialism, and this is something that, and we speak of appeasement, but I think there's more to it than that. If you follow what Angela Merkel has said, and you also follow and I caught this, Lindsey Graham said this during the debates about a month ago. They have both said that we need these refugees. We need this influx because the pyramid social structure that we have is unsustainable. We are simply not producing enough, replenishing our population to sustain our social services. So whether you want to look at Medicare or Social Security, or the different welfare systems and structures that you have in Europe, where you're taking more out of it, you're not having children, and you're depleting from that system, you're going to go bankrupt. So both of them have expressed this need that we have for refugees, and it appears that we need this immigration at any cost, because our society, the way that we currently have it structured, is simply unsustainable. So, and one of the chapters that I look at in my book, I compare the biblical model of healthcare to that of ancient nations. We want to think of healthcare in particular as something as innovative and very modern and very progressive. but we're actually only repeating history, because ancient Egypt also had a healthcare system. Ancient Mesopotamia had a healthcare system whereby they sold very government-controlled drugs, to what they considered drugs, pharmaceuticals, to their citizens. And same thing in Greece. Greece would have been the Maximus model, where they really provided free healthcare for all of their citizens, but at an enormous cost of taxation and very bureaucratic system that's put in place. So, I think if we go back and we learn from history, instead of this process of repeating it every few centuries, I think we would really be the better for it.
You just said something that is stunning. I never thought of this. You're saying that those who favor the influx of the refugees would help fix the problem of population based upon the fact that we've been killing the population through abortion.
Absolutely.
I've never connected those dots. That's stunning.
Well, it is. And what's scary, I think there's a lot of naivety in it, because they believe, I tend to think, and this is just my own personal opinion, that these people will come in, they'll see the wealth, and we're giving these people money. We're giving these people a lot of money. In some places, we're doing it so that they won't cause trouble. They won't have marches, and they won't go out and prey on the local population. So we're doing all these things to pacify, and thinking that they will integrate into Western society, and thinking that they are going to eventually adapt. But I don't think that we realize how ingrained that culture is, to be isolated, to remain their own community with their own identity, and to work until they are a larger population, and then to go out and use subversive means to subject the rest of the population. And I did attend a Security Council meeting here about 6 weeks ago, and they went through some of the basic fundamental beliefs of Islam and what they hold as far as attacking the West and the different things. And, I just find that a lot of our policies are just very, very ignorant. We believe that, as you said, kumbaya, you're just going to love everyone, you're going to accept everyone, you're going to be tolerant, and that because you love them, they're going to be reciprocal. And that is simply not a value they embrace. Reciprocity is not a cultural value. So it's just not going to happen. So I think it's time that we wake up. We really need to drink the coffee a little bit more, and sober up and deal with these, not according to our values, but understanding what their values are, and then holding them accountable. And if they don't comply, then there has to be consequences, because we cannot put our citizens at risk.
Brilliant. Let me ask a question, and we'll take a break, and you can think about it during the break. How might the laws of the Torah be interpreted, and do they have any relevance in our modern world? And the reason I'm asking you that question, we're struggling as a nation to embrace Israel these days, at least under this administration, when yet the core of who we are comes from them. I'm wondering how dangerous this may be, and can modern philosophy separate the two? You're the genius behind all that, and I'll come back to you. All right, we're with Jodell Onstott, and by the way, you can go to Yahweh Exists, and Yahweh spelled YHWH, and then exists. YahwehExists.com. This book, it's just remarkable. I've looked in it on several occasions for arguments that I find myself in, and has she done her homework? This is a great resource. Get it, and or maybe give it as a present during this Christmas season. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at the Deaf TV. Did you know that when you support the Deaf TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back, and what a delight to have with us today Jodell Onstott. She is a socio-biblical and historical research specialist. And as long as all that sounds, it's true. And it's evidenced in her writings. And I can't tell you, this is no quick read. This is a historic book, research book, that answers a lot of questions and puts a lot of things in perspective. It's called Yahweh Exists. And you can go to YahwehExists.com as the website. Let me encourage you to check it out at the bookstores. And what a delight to have her back with us today. All right, Jodell, is there any connection from your research from the Torah to the Constitution?
Yes, you find, let me begin with a very broad basis regarding a constitutional concept. You find in Torah that there is separation of powers. There is the establishment of the priesthood, which functioned like a Supreme Court. You have a monarchy, that was your executive branch, and then you had the Adah, which functioned like a Senate. And beyond that, you had a Kahal, which was like a Congress. So you find that a lot of the modern ideas that we have today are really based on the paradigm that is established at Mount Sinai. You find also this idea that we don't take matters into our own hands. And let me say that this is very different from Sharia law, where you do take matters into your own hands, and where you go, and if someone is injured or if someone is murdered, you go and you seek retribution personally. The Torah was juxtaposed against this in that it disallowed you as a citizen from taking the law into your own hands. It says that you should seek those matters through the court system. So you had the system of justice that functioned according to Constitution, and it was supposed to judge not according to the will and the whim of man or a judge or by bribery, but it was supposed to function according to principle and according to value. And that is why we in America have had such incredible peace, prosperity, and harmony among our citizens, is because we have followed this for 200 years. You know, Europe, you find that there's a little bit more chaos, a little bit more conflict over the years, because there are competing value systems. But in America, with our Judeo-Christian heritage, that has given us a lot of common ground. Now, I want to speak about one particular issue where the Torah could really enlighten our policy today, and that is on immigration. You find that if a person immigrated to ancient Israel, you just didn't come into the land, gain the right to vote, or even a place to live. You had a lot of rights and freedoms. You had more rights and freedoms in ancient Israel than you did in any other nations. Because historically, if you immigrated to another nation, you were usually preyed upon. You were considered a slave. It was very, very difficult to make it from one nation to another. But in Israel, you had equal rights and equal protection under the law, something that was really revolutionary for its time. But you also had this idea that you didn't gain citizenship right away. It was a process. It was a process whereby you had to adapt the culture and you had to integrate into Israel's society. So that in the third generation, if you immigrated from a peaceful nation, in the third generation, you could gain the right to vote. In the 10th generation, if you immigrated from a hostile nation, say like back then it would have been, say, from the Amalekites or the Moabites. Today we might equate that to Russia or Syria, or some other nation that is Cuba, something that's verbally hostile to us. It took 10 generations before you gained the right to vote, you and your children. And what this did is it protected Israel's citizens from subversive means. In the Second Temple era, we find that these values were not held to, and you have Sanballat, the Horite, who was coming in and being very subversive, and he is able to manipulate Israel's priesthood and do some things within the the Judea territory that really do not benefit Israel's citizens. They take the taxes, they exploit it, and there's a lot of oppression that goes on during that era. So when we go back to history and we learn from it, we can say, well, these values do indeed work, and they are in there for our protection. So I think, whether we look at immigration or healthcare, the Torah really lays out a very sound principle that work in any society. It's not just ancient Israel society. It's not just America. It will work for France, Great Britain, modern state of Israel, if they're implemented. But, it's been my experience that everybody just kind of wants to go halfway. They want to say, oh, we'll observe this one, but not this one, and not really seeing that big picture of how it enlightens the entire society, and it provides that righteousness and that justice and that liberty. Liberty within government, within society, and between our fellow man.
Wow, that is beautiful. So you'd have to conclude that our founding fathers were divinely led.
I totally agree. When you go back and you read what they have written, James Madison has said that the 10 Commandments were the basis of our government, and James Madison is one of those people that is not credited with being religious. Thomas Jefferson said that he trembled at the thought of the being, the divine, being just, and that justice would not forever be delayed. So they all recognized this idea of accountability and this idea that the Torah formed the basis of the U.S. Constitution. And look at America. What nation in the last 1,000 years that we know of has had the liberty, that has had the incredible system of justice and righteousness that we have enjoyed? I mean, our business, our entrepreneurship, everything has excelled because we have the freedom to pursue studies in all various fields, and to encourage business, Apple, all of these ideas that we can do because we are not impeded by government. We're not impeded by an oligarchic system where you have the ruling elites that really kind of control everything. But, as we depart from it, guess what? Rather than power being dispersed among many individuals, power begins to become consolidated. And as it becomes consolidated, you have more ruling elites. So, and I think really the genius almost behind ancient Israel's constitution was this idea that every person in Israel, at least every male citizen, was born with this landed heritage that was passed down generationally. And it was a non-taxable. So could you imagine living in your home without any property taxes? You just have this freedom where there's a obligation that you don't have to meet. So it gives you an incredible amount of liberty. And even though we have property taxes in the United States, they're generally pretty low depending where you live. But comparably speaking, we have such incredible liberty. But again, that liberty is because of the foundation on the 10 Commandments and so many of the Torah ideals.
What a delight you are to remind us of all of this. Boy, I could comment on a lot of things, but time doesn't allow me to do this. I wish I had you for about 3 days. Let me ask you this. Do you, in history and studying this, when a nation drifts away, we've seen where there's been revolutions to bring it back. Do you think that's possible for the United States?
I think it's always possible. In just strictly speaking, in the Torah perspective, you have all the prophets, and throughout every era, they're always encouraging Israel to return. And it says, if you return to him, he will return to you. And I really think that is the same beacon call for our generation. If we return to God, if we return to the foundation of our Constitution, and we renew ourselves, then you know what? Those blessings are there, that unity, everything is there at our doorstep. It's just a matter of doing. I like the saying that talk is cheap, because we can talk about it all day long, but at some point in time, there has to rise up a generation that is willing to do and to carry the torch. I pray that it's done peaceably, but we know from history that oftentimes these conflicts of ideas are not resolved peaceably. So whether it is resolved peaceably or through civil strife or some other means, the important thing is that we get back to it so that we can then proceed forward in this incredible liberty that we've been blessed with in this nation.
Jodell, before I run out of time, not knowing this history very well, but I find it interesting as a result of what happened in Paris over the weekend. The president of Paris sent some jets into Syria, and here's what he said. They dropped 20 bombs on an Islamic Jihad radical terrorist camp. Now, can you take Islam, jihad, and terrorism and put it together when everybody is saying, no, they're separate, that the Islam faith doesn't support jihad and radical terrorism, but yet he says that they attacked an Islamic jihad radical terrorist training camp. That puts it all together under a religion, doesn't it?
It really does. When you look at the foundation of Judeo-Christianity, you have Moses, who is this leader who leads Israel out of oppression. Yes, they do conquer a land, but it's confined only to a land whereby they are going to go and inhabit it. They're going to live there and dwell there. They're not there to conquer the entire world. You have Jesus. He brings a message of love and of peace. You know, render unto Caesar, which is Caesar. So when you look at the Judeo-Christian heritage, the heritage that we have inherited is this one of peace, this one of laws, of rules, of constitution. You only conquer in the sense that you have to establish your own sanctuary and you have to establish your own peace and prosperity on the land. Fast forward to Islam. Look at the paradigm, look at the example set by Muhammad, where it is just open oppression and open subjugation, where you go in and you slaughter men, women, and children. And there's this idea of religious warfare that is established with the foundation of Islam. So if you want to look at the example set by the nation's leaders, there's a very strong contrast there. And that is why you have this discussion within Islamic circles as to what is the value.
I'm out of time. Thank you so much. I've got to get you back more often. By the way, go to YahwehExists.com. That's the website. Check out the book. Get it at the bookstores, YahwehExists.com. Jodell, you're a delight. You're just wonderful. I want to do a series with you, so we'll get you back more often, okay?
Sounds great. Thank you, Perry.
Have a great day. All right. Again, YahwehExists.com is the website. Check it out. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.